Jack, I want to jump back to you. You mentioned corporate social responsibility. I'm really keen because, I mean, is it? I think there's a temptation to think, it's a buzzword, or it's maybe talked about a lot, but not doesn't factor in too much on the decision making of some of these larger businesses that some companies like yourselves engage with. How important is corporate social responsibility in your engagement with your customers in general?
Um, Look, I think anybody that's not taking CSR or ESG, environmental social governance, seriously, you need to wake up. Like, just to put it into perspective, this is how much business in globally is putting emphasis is putting onto renewable energy. In 2012, the Climate Divestment Impact Fund, or the value of private equity globally, that it said we're no longer going to invest in renewable energy, was 52 billion, 2012. By 2017 or 2016, it had a 22,000% increase, and that value had moved to $11 trillion. So by 2016, 16% of the world's private equity has said we're no longer going to invest in or back any businesses that have anything to do with fossil fuels unless they've got a very clear divestment strategy. In 2020, BlackRock joined that group. BlackRock are the world's largest asset managers, and they took that divestment fund value from 11 trillion to $45 trillion. So over 50% of the world's private equity has said, unless you're heavily in CSR or you've got a really clear ESG strategy, you're not getting our money. So half the world's capital, so when you talk about big businesses, we're winning jobs. We won a project recently, almost 20 million, a single contract for solar and battery storage on schools, where the payback was about 8 to 9 years. But they looked at it and said, what does our mission statement as an organization say? What is our purpose? And they're a Catholic organization. It's quite clearly become better stewards of our land and care for our common home. And that, for them, an 8 to 9 year return was viable because of all the other benefits that it had. And part of our pitch, everything that we do now, we talk about CSR and we talk about ESG and we talk about the positive outcomes of doing this, and we talk to them about, and we educate our customers, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. You're going to lose out. Half the world's money you're not going to be able to access. And that stimulates, I guess, their mindset and encourages investment into it. So CSR is huge. And I think organizations, they want to start partnering with other organizations that have strong ESG or CSR objectives, and they put a value on it. So organizations, we're seeing all these organizations saying we're going to be 100% renewable by this time. Those organizations, it's only a matter of time before they use their influence to start pushing it down their supply chain. And those organizations are going to say, okay, well, if you want to be our supplier, what are you doing about renewable energy? And what are you doing about CSR? And you don't want to be looking to scramble and say, oh yeah, I'll give a couple grand to the footy club down the road. That doesn't mean anything. It's not meaningful, and they're just going to see that as reactive. You need to be able to demonstrate over time that you've had a proactive CSR strategy, and that you've implemented that. And they're going to look at that and say, well, this is a business that can actually deliver on what it's saying it's going to deliver, and it's got a proven track record. So if you're not in that area, you really need to look at that. And in your tender submissions, you need to be talking about ethical procurement. You need to be talking about sourcing equipment ethically. Modern slavery, all of this sort of thing. So CSR is huge, and you need to pay attention to that.
Good answer, man. That was
probably wasn't expecting all that, Sean. But
so just going on with that, then, one of my recent hobby horses is full responsibility of the life cycle of products that we're using. Now, that's been the elephant in the room for years, and there's just currently it's been investigated. There's a lot of talk about it. Do you think we need to take more steps in that regard too?
100%, mate. We actually won that tender for the battery, and we were the only company that tendered that actually had a end of life recycling program for the battery. We have a standard that we said this is what we're going to do with the battery at end of life, and this is an organization that's pro environment and pro our home. That's the sort of thing they want to see. That one little document that you put together to show thought it can win you so much in a tender. So I think it is important.
I think that's great, Jack, but it's also a blight on the industry in 2020 that no one else is doing that. It's incredible to me. Like, it should be such an obvious thing for a business and an industry built on respecting the environment and leaving a better planet for future generations. How we're still sweeping end of life issues under the rug and saying, yeah, it's going to be an issue. It blows me away. I mean, what the hell are we doing as a sector if we're not addressing the end of life plan? It'll end up like nickel cadmium batteries, which are all sitting under old solar installers' sheds with a piece of tarp over them, because nobody wants to talk about it because they last for so long. I mean, that's not the way to create a credible, respected industry. So we all need to get together and pressure the regulators to start demanding this and forcing it to become a part of the discussion rather than just sweeping under the rug, because we won't be taken
I think
seriously.
otherwise it's going to be forced upon us, man. And I think batteries are one thing, but I think modules are the biggest thing. The amount of landfill that we're creating and panels that were sold in the last 10 years with 25-year performance guarantees that are going into landfill now.
Yep.
And people say, oh, we can send them to Africa, send them to places where they'll get value out of it, but they're still going to come to end of life. So do we push that down the line to the manufacturers? Do we take some of the responsibility? Is it reasonable to expect that a consumer spends, say, $5,000 on a solar system, a 25-year warranty, and we don't take any responsibility for where it goes? So I think if we don't answer those questions, I think it's going to be forced upon us via, some sort of tariff or some sort of cost that's put upon us. And it's going to take that. Or we can get on the front foot and maybe incentivize recycling so it's commercially viable. I know that there's some initiatives, there's a group in Melbourne setting up and everything else, but if we don't take responsibility for that, it will be forced upon us.
I was just going to agree with Luke. I mean, we take solar panels off and inverters off customers' roofs all the time these days. NRG is a part of a service company as well, so if we can say that we do, but with the smarter homes regs coming in, it makes it almost impossible to repair an existing solar system because they need to be earthed. I don't have any, we can't use the Galvo here, for example. There's lots of things that mean that we do need to take solar systems down. And what happens is they sit in the back of our warehouse and we end up selling them on Gumtree, but I've got no idea where they go. It actually worries me, Luke. It's a very good point.
I was talking to Blair Tester today about this, and he was discussing. I think he threw around the numbers that it was like it took 18 times more energy or something to recycle the cells in the panel than it did to than the panel would create after it had been remanufactured or something. Like, it just sounded like it's a pretty big challenge. He mentioned that maybe the cells themselves could be crushed and used in bitumen or something for the creation of roads. Is it? Have you guys heard of that? Or?
Yeah. I was talking to Blair about this as well. Actually, it's quite interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, the issue. Yeah.
Maybe what we need is just a bit of an industry roundtable, a bit of a hackathon where anyone who's interested in trying to solve the problem, because it sounds like it's not that easy, but there's probably a lot of good people out there with a lot of good ideas. Maybe that's what needs to happen.
One of the fundamental problems is you've got a solar panel that might be worth $150 brand new that you have to transport halfway around the country, 2,000 kilometers to get to a processing facility to then break it down and then work out how to repurpose it. So there's an environmental issue there, and there's a commercial profit issue. It's just not profitable to do that because they're big and heavy, but they're not worth much. So it's certainly a problem. But if we just simply say that it doesn't make sense and it's not viable, then we're not going to be taken seriously, as I said before.